So you're tempted by the newly released Revox B77 Mark III? Yes, of course you are, but you probably can't afford it at €15,950, which at today's exchange rates is $17,421 or 13,456 Great British pounds. That price quoted on the Revox website includes VAT sales tax, but since sales taxes differ around the world, as do import duties, you'll probably need some headroom in your budget just in case. Can't afford that? No, neither can I, but there are alternatives. I'll stick to the Revox brand because, other than the professional Studer brand, that's what I'm most familiar with. And with the Revox that's in good shape, you won't go wrong. The alternatives are, of course, second-hand machines from eBay or one of a number of specialist audio dealers. Price, of course, will depend on condition, but you should be able to get a machine that's been well maintained or well restored for a reasonably dedicated enthusiast's budget. You'll be looking for a B77 Mark II or 1, or in reverse chronological order, A77 Mark IV, 3, 2, or 1. Of course, more recent models spec out better and have more sophisticated features, but I've used both the B77 and A77. I can't remember which marks, unfortunately, but my experiences have been good. And in my humble opinion, IMHO, they approach professional quality very closely. There are earlier Revox machines. I had a G36, which was the immediate predecessor to the A77. It was good, but at this point in time, you'd probably be a collector of audio history to want one. Now, let's suppose you were an audio professional on a budget, let's say in 1975. You'd want a Revox A77. You'd want it to be half-track, and you'd want it to run at 15 inches per second. All of this like fully pro machines. And you'd know that if you mastered an album to your A77, it wouldn't be the quality of the recording that influenced sales figures, it would absolutely be the quality of the music. But even with a relatively affordable machine, quality comes at a cost, tape cost. And we're thinking costly. How much would depend on how much you're going to use. If you're mixing a track from a multi-track recording, then you don't need much more tape than the duration of the track. But if you're recording, let's say, a live concert, you need as much tape as fits the duration of the concert. But I'm not thinking about professionals in 1975 here. I'm thinking enthusiasts today who are not going to be making studio recordings nor live concert recordings. They want the reel-to-reel experience in their home hi-fi. Quickly, I'll consider what these enthusiasts, I'm going to say we for short, are going to use our reel-to-reel for. Well, it's possible to buy albums on reel-to-reel tape, just like you would vinyl or even cassette. Hey, you can buy them from Revox, but the catalogue is small and the price high, like €480. I noticed that the ones I've checked run at 15 inches per second. So we're getting the best sound possible, but we can't afford it. Can we? So I'd say that the best source for the enthusiast would be live recordings from the radio. I could say FM radio, but radio comes to us by various different means these days. So whatever source you choose. Live recordings too from the telly. Why not? Yes, of course you can store all this stuff digitally one way or another. But that's not why we're here, is it? We want the reel-to-reel experience. So let's get down to costs, which is the purpose of my video today. I'm looking at Recording the Masters products, abbreviated as RTM. This is brand new tape, not previously used and not new old stock. There's also ATR magnetics, so there's another option to consider. Anyway, RTM. What you might consider is their SM911 product. There are options. Firstly, you'll need 1/4-inch tape. Wider widths are for the pros, and they don't fit your Revox. You can have a 7-inch spool or a 10.5-inch spool. Come on, you didn't buy your Revox to use teeny tiny puny spools, did you? You can choose a plastic spool or metal. Metal. You want your machine to look good, don't you? Okay, the plastic spool costs 46 GBP plus tax, and the metal 67. That's 21 GBP more. 48 Australian dollary dues, if you want to think of it that way. But maybe it's the price of being an enthusiast. You're only going to have a few tapes to impress your friends. You're not building up a whole library. Anyway, you can save 21 GBP, 27 USD if you wish. But you can save more. It's all about the machine you buy and what you can do with it. Let's start with tape speed. As I said earlier, The professional's tape speed is 15 inches per second. 30 sometimes with pros and cons, but let's stick with 15. But you're not a pro. You're an enthusiast on a budget. So you buy a machine that tops out at 7.5 inches per second. So where a full reel of tape, typically 2,500 feet, lasts around 33 minutes at 15 inches per second, it'll give you more than an hour at 7.5. You've halved your costs, but you can save more. Your lovely Revox has a choice of tape speeds. If the top speed is 7.5, then you can also choose 3 3/4. Of course, it's a compromise. Being an enthusiast, you may consider these compromises as part of the texture of your hobby, and you'll commend yourself on your ability to hear them easily. So at the slower speed, you'll get less high-end response, but maybe you're old like me and you can't hear it anyway. You'll get less signal-to-noise ratio, so you could be hearing 4 or 5 decibels more noise. The speed, stability, wow and flutter will probably be worse, and maybe the difference between not noticeable and noticeable. More distortion at high levels, leading to less dynamic range if you reduce your recording level to compensate. But of course, your tape costs are halved. I'll just throw in here that there are machines, that were only ever intended for the domestic market that could run at 1 7/8. Too slow. But it's interesting to consider that the Uher report, which was used professionally for reporting, the clues in the name, could run as slowly as 15/16 inches per second. Useful really only for speech, or for an enthusiast's fun. So anyway, 3 3/4. It's doable and you get the reel-to-reel experience at a quarter the cost. But there's another way. In the olden, some might say golden days of mono, a recording was made over the full 1/4-inch width of the tape. Obviously, this isn't going to work for stereo, so the tape was recorded over half the width for the left channel, half the width for the right, with some lost for an anti-crosstalk guard band in the middle. We call this half-track. Some might alternatively call this 2-track, but I think that's confusing. Stereo is a single recording with left and right channels. 2-track to me is like 4-track, 8-track, 16-track, 24-track, i.e. it's a multi-track recording in miniature with just 2 tracks. Anyway, that's a small point, but worth keeping in mind for what's coming up in a mo. So, half-track. We can have 1/4 track. This splits the width of the tape into 4. Okay, here's funny. This is what Grok thinks a 1/4 track tape head looks like. If I sketch it with my meagre artistic skills, it's more like this, where half-track would be this. So you can see that there are gaps where the tape isn't recorded. Now, the magical thing is that when the tape comes to an end, you can swap the reels, thus turning the tape over and record in the gaps. Like a cassette. Like a cassette. I should have said that earlier, shouldn't I? Anyway, the result is that you can get 2 uses out of your 2,500 feet of tape and record over 2 hours at 7.5 or 4 hours at 3 3/4. You've effectively cut your £67 GBP cost down to around 8. And at this price, for even a moderate enthusiast, I'm going to say that this is affordable for the reel-to-reel experience. To be clear, whether a machine is half-track or 1/4 track is in the machine. It's one or the other, and you can't change it other than replacing the heads. Tape speed, on the other hand, is switchable between 15 and 7.5, or 7.5 and 3 3/4. And for clarity, I said 1/4 track rather than what's sometimes said as 4-track. 4-track to me is a multi-track machine that you use in the studio. 1/4 track is the domestic stereo machine. So, have I won any converts? Are you all in for the reel-to-reel experience? Are you there already? So my questions for you are you going the whole hog with half-track 15 inches per second? Are you okay with 7.5, 3 3/4? Would you prefer to save tape costs with a 1/4 track machine? See you soon.